In today's video, we're talking about how Sony just laid out the future of gaming, and it's pretty good. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and this is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. So if you want to keep up to date on everything regarding your PlayStation 5, make sure you have your notifications set to all, and of course, help me out by subscribing. I'd love to get to 200,000 subs by the end of the year. Today's video is a single topic video because the chairman of Sony, like the entire Sony group, Kenichiro Yoshida, just did like an investor speech where he laid out the entire future of PlayStation. And while there are a few things in it I'm concerned about, most of it is really good. So the first thing he talked about is the future of PlayStation moving beyond the actual PlayStation 5 console. And of course, the weirdest thing happened when all the headlines came out about this. They just conveniently eliminated PC from the three pillars of mobile, PC, and cloud. So it seems like they're moving on to mobile and cloud, but that is not the case. So what Yoshida said is, in short, it'll be ubiquitous. Wherever there is computing, users will be able to play their favorite games seamlessly. Gamers will be able to find a place to play in different spaces. While PlayStation will remain our core product, we will expand our gaming experiences to PC, mobile, and cloud. The first thing I want to touch on is that seamlessness, right? Because having a PlayStation account that you can log into wherever you're playing and have your saves and your profile and everything like that transfer, that is going to be the ultimate gaming experience. Because I talk about it all the time, my two favorite places to play are the PS5 and the Steam Deck. And for some reason, Sony is not really concerned with making a true successor to the PSP or PS Vita. And if you get a Steam Deck, it's basically the best of both worlds, because not only can you stream games from your PS5 to the Steam Deck OLED and actually play in HDR, and it works great. It works as well as the PS Portal, if not a little bit better. You can also download and play a lot of those games on the go. So you can get the great graphics at home if you really want that experience. And then when you're on the go, you can take those games with you. But the big problem there is that when you play something like God of War, or you play something like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, your save and your trophies do not sync with the PC version. So if in the future they're able to get to the point where you can log into your PlayStation Network account and actually do that, that would make PlayStation even more of a dominant player in the space, because more people will be playing their games together. And it seems like that's exactly what they're doing. Helldivers 2 is right around the corner, and in the Steam page for that game, it says you need to log into your PlayStation Network account to actually play the game, which is cool because that tells me that your save progress is going to transfer. For some reason, Sony doesn't really seem to believe in this game all that much, because it comes out the exact same day as Foam Stars, which is on PS Plus for free, whereas Helldivers 2 is like a paid game. But everything I've seen from Helldivers means it could, everything I've seen personally from Helldivers basically makes it look like an awesome sleeper hit, just like the first game was, even though it's like a perspective change from over the top to true third-person combat. This video is sponsored by Wanted Dead. Do you miss the days of focused single-player hack and slash games? Then you need to check out this video sponsor, Wanted Dead. Make sure you don't overlook one of 2023's coolest games, Wanted Dead. Despite not being in the spotlight, it has earned acknowledgement from gamers and prominent outlets such as Kotaku and Gaming Bolt. And by the way, the developers have just rolled out the latest patch. It improves your experience on PC and consoles. Current gen update is now live, and patches for PS4 and Xbox One are coming soon. Stay tuned for an even more captivating adventure. Stay tuned for additional updates and improvements promising an even more immersive game in the future. It's available on Steam and the Epic Game Store, as well as all the various PlayStation and Xbox consoles. The combat in this game can be described as gun fu. You have a katana to slice up your opponents, you have a gun to mow them down, and a grenade launcher to blow them to pieces. Wanted Dead is like if you took the cyberpunk vision of the late 80s and combined it with the technological futurism of the early 90s. It looks so good. And the best part is the melee combat is absolutely gruesome, which you know I love. You're gonna have to master the controls, or all you're gonna be seeing in this hardcore game is game over. And of course, when you master your sidearm and your katana, you're gonna find 50 different ways to gruesomely finish off your enemies. But of course, there's a lighter side as well. There are jokes and Easter eggs. And you've even got some really cool mini games like an old school side-scrolling shooter, a ramen eating contest, and karaoke. Click the link in the description to experience Wanted Dead. Of course, it's available on the PS4 and 5, but you're also able to pick it up on the Xbox Series S and X and the Xbox One. Dive into the action-packed slasher shooter hybrid today. I think this game could totally pop off if it does end up as good as it looks. As far as cloud goes, that's what I'm like the least concerned about. I think at the very most that technology will always be a supplement. I remember when the Xbox game streaming came out, they were so bullish on it. They were like, we're gonna get this on iPhone, we're gonna get this on Samsung TVs. And then as time has gone on, the focus has shifted so far from that and more towards just playing as many many games as you want on Game Pass that they don't even talk about Xbox cloud streaming anymore. And I check in with Ray once in a while because he tests this out every couple months for videos on his channel, and it's not getting better, it's actually getting worse. Not only does the streaming quality degrade over time, you get blocky textures and latency and everything like that. You also, though, have queues to get into pretty much any game that you would want to play on streaming, like Fortnite, since it's not available on mobile. So from that perspective, I just don't ever think this is going to be a true focus. I understand why publishers and developers have this technology, because if it ever did pop off and people became okay streaming games over the cloud over actually buying them at the store or on their PlayStation 5, that would be great for them because they would eliminate piracy completely unless people were able to hack Sony and download the game. But for me, it's just never going to work, because at the very end of the day, you're always going to have latency, and I don't want that. I'll just play on PC where you get zero latency, I guess. I don't really know what would happen, but I don't think we really have too much to worry about with the cloud. It feels like something that Sony has to mention for their investors, because the investors are like, what about this cloud thing? Is anyone doing that these days? We should be doing that. And it always makes me think of Scrooged when Bill Murray's boss comes in and is like, one of the audiences we're not reaching is cats. Cats watch TV. They're smart enough to do it. So in this Scrooge TV special you're making, make sure there's a mouse or something dangling on the screen just throughout so that cats can watch TV. That's what it feels like when they talk about streaming. It's like no one cares. But what I'm honestly getting more excited about is mobile. So recently we've seen games like Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil Village coming to iPhone. We also have Death Stranding coming, which is cool. But I think what Sony's going to have to do is make games that can straddle mobile and console and PC. Something like, I don't know, Genshin Impact, where you can play it on your phone, you can come home, download it on your PS5 and pick up exactly where you left off. But if we get Sony's version of that, I would hope that they come at it from a quality standpoint like they do with so many other games, where maybe we could pay for these games instead of them being gacha games or just free to play microtransaction fest. Because if you had a system where it's a multiplayer game or something like that, you could actually build out a really cool game. I always think back to when the second generation of the iPod Touch came out and the App Store launched with it, and they had awesome versions of all the biggest games. EA was like the reigning champ of this. When they would release stuff like Need for Speed Shift, Dead Space 2, and Mass Effect 2, they had mobile games that went along with all of those. Need for Speed Shift was a full-on ground-up mobile game that you played in first person and used tilt controls to steer your car, and it actually worked flawlessly. I would love if they re-brought that game back or made a new version of Need for Speed. With Dead Space, they built a brand new Dead Space game, like a full-on third-person shooter with a brand new story and a brand new character, and it was awesome. It was like 6 hours long, and it fit right in between Dead Space 1 and 2. And then with Mass Effect, they had a third-person action-based shooter where you would jump from cover to cover, and you could actually take the character from that game and equip them to your party in Mass Effect 2. And I always thought that was so cool. The only reason that failed is because of the iPhone race to the bottom, where games had to be 99 cents to $2.99 or else people wouldn't pay for them. And when you're building full-on console-style games that are made for the iPhone, they were charging like $10 to $15 for them, and no one really bought them. But I feel like if Sony's putting some of their biggest franchises on mobile as well with side games that are the right size for the iPhone, that could be really cool. And I personally would be okay paying for those, because I've been playing a ton of mobile games at the gym while I do my incline walk for an hour every day, and playing Mud Runner on my iPhone is a great experience. So I'd love to see Sony really actually do something with mobile, especially because they've spent so much money on that platform. But even with that said, it is cool to go back to the initial statement where he makes it very clear that PlayStation is their priority and everything else is like a tree under it. And that lines up perfectly with what they're doing with the PlayStation Portal, with the PSVR 2. Instead of having separate consoles and everything like that, they're building everything around the PlayStation 5. And I'm assuming that will be even more ubiquitous when they move on to the PlayStation 6 in 2027, if the rumors are to be believed. I'll never be the guy though that has the like clip-on phone mount for my controller. I have too many devices that already do what I want, and having a Steam Deck OLED where I can stream my PS5 games in HDR and they look amazing, or just take them on the go, that's exactly where I want to be. I hope what they focus on more before mobile is letting my saves and progress transfer from PlayStation games. And that brings us to the next section, which is subscription services, and you'll get why in a second. He said, we do have a subscription business model, but at the same time, people usually play one game at a time. So this all-you-can-eat type of business model where there's many games, may not be so valuable compared to video streaming services. We have a kind of balanced hybrid service on PlayStation Network with a subscription as well as pay-per content, and I really think Sony has cracked the code here. So we know with Xbox, the way it works is when they release a game, it is on Game Pass, and that counts for everything from small games like Hi-Fi Rush all the way to the top with games like Starfield. And the problem we're seeing is that a lot of people will just download any game that comes out, they'll play it for like 15 or 20 minutes, and they'll usually quit by the time they even get the first achievement. If you check achievements for pretty much any Xbox game, the engagement is incredibly low. Like, most people don't even get the first achievement in Starfield. Whereas with PlayStation, what they do is they release a game for $70, and then a year or two after, they add it to PlayStation Plus Extra as an experiment. We saw this with games like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and with Horizon Forbidden West. And with both of those games, you can check the trophies. A lot of people not only get past the first trophy, which, like, huge milestone, the bar was on the floor there, they actually complete a lot of these games to the point where Sony saw a lot of engagement with Horizon Forbidden West, and I'm assuming they actually got a lot of money from selling Burning Shores as an add-on. And I would guess that the same thing goes for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where you could get the PS4 version on PS Plus for free. It would be in your account forever, and then you could pay $10 to upgrade it to the PS5 version. Now, if you ever stop paying for PS Plus, that game would be removed from your account, and I'm not sure what would happen there. Like, maybe it would do the discount on the PlayStation Store, where you could get the game for $50 instead of $60, but still, having this business model where you release the game and allow there to be an upgrade to the Ultimate Edition, that seems to be the sweet spot for both PlayStation and Xbox, because there was tons of news stories when Forza Horizon 5 came out that they had a huge engagement from people paying for the Ultimate Edition to not only get all the extra content for Horizon 5, but also be able to play early. I'm not a huge fan of the pay extra to play early thing, because it's just like paying extra to play on the game's release date. It's not actually playing early, but that's good if you're doing a subscription-based model, because the biggest problem with these is that there's no way to recoup $200 or $300 million budgets on huge AAA games if you're just relying on people paying month to month. So Sony's kind of found this perfect middle ground by having that 1 to 2 year gap between game launches, where all they have to do is wait for the sales to dip enough where they can get profit from the game with subscription service monthly prices, but still have people engaging with it. And then right around that same time, they can release DLC expansions like Burning Shores, and they'll get a little bit more money out of it with people paying $20 or $30 for those. I think Sony's always been good with experimentation. Like, they did that with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and Horizon Forbidden West. I don't think we'll see that again because of how much it killed the sales for Horizon Forbidden West, but they also do weird experiments like with God of War's Valhalla DLC. A lot of people were surprised that that was free because it was such a meaty expansion, and Sony's probably just testing things out to see if that increases sales of the original game, because if you increase sales of a game that's still $60 or $70, that'll get you more revenue than a $20 expansion. It makes a lot of sense. And the weirdest thing about PS Plus is that with PS Plus Premium, a lot of people who subscribe to PlayStation Plus just get PS Plus Premium and don't even engage with the features it provides, like the 2-hour trials, the game streaming, being able to stream PS5 games, all those extra things that they add on, even the classic games. People don't even engage with those, and the very most, they just engage with the PS Plus Extra library, which I don't know if that's just a messaging thing, like they don't know that they can only get PS Plus Extra and still get access to all those games, but it's still a weird phenomenon to be sure. And I will say the choice of games on PS Plus Extra is leaps and bounds better than what you get on Xbox Game Pass. Like, Xbox, when they release stuff like Indiana Jones or more games in the future, I'm sure that will shift back to be more equalized, but as of right now, comparing games like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Demon's Souls, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut, Death Stranding Director's Cut, the list of first-party games goes on and on to what you get on Xbox. It's like night and day difference when you're talking about PS Plus Extra. So I think Sony has found the good middle ground there. I'm still weary of subscription services. I'm kind of glad that they're leveling out, because I just like that premium format where you just pay for a game and you get the game and you can play the game and then you can move on. That's great. And that brings us to the third section, which is artificial intelligence, which honestly, I was scared when I saw that section in the breakdown of the speech, but when I read it, I was really happy to hear what Yoshida had to say. He said the convergence of computing and entertainment is a mega trend and is also born out of computing, so we can't get in the way of technology. But at the same time, entertainment is a people business. For example, it is technically possible to create a movie scene in which Tom Hanks speaks Japanese with perfect lip sync, but should we? That is the question. The content that forms the basis of entertainment is creator generated and copyrighted. Creators' involvement is essential essential. Therefore, Sony positions AI as a technology that supports creators. AI should not replace them. One example is games. Games are computer software, so using large language models will help streamline games development, allowing creators to focus more on creativity. So what I'm reading from that, and this is all speculation, so take it with a grain of salt, is not necessarily Sony wanting to make AI assets for their games and the art department. They want to keep that creative. They want to let their developers create things from scratch because that's how they get the best games on the market, which they already have. But when it comes to doing things like placing collectibles that are handmade, or like building out map markers, or just things like that, I feel like that's something where you could totally let AI take over and just generate the map for you. And then you could get engagement out of players who want to play 100 hours versus people who just want to engage with like a 20 to 30 hour story. I think I brought up Foam Stars earlier in this video. That's a bad example of AI use. Like, Square Enix is always at the forefront of doing stupid shit. I don't know why. With Foam Stars, they're making AI art assets, and I think that's pretty egregious. There's like album art in the game for the in-game soundtrack, and it's like, I don't think that really saved them any time, right? Like, all they had to do was outsource the album art creation to like some creators in the space, and honestly, if they were smart, they would have hired some people who make Splatoon fan art because they want to capture that Splatoon audience with Foam Stars. It's basically like Square Enix's version of Splatoon. The Finals is one that I'm 50-50 on. Basically what it does is it uses AI to generate the announcer for the game, and it does a pretty good job. Like, it's very dynamic. It responds to what you're doing in the game. It keeps up with all the teams that are playing, and it is engaging to hear an announcer overhead telling you everything that's going on the map. But still, I feel like that could have been done the hard way by just hiring people to provide enough voice lines so that the game can read what's happening and deliver those voice lines, because that's really what it's already doing. It's just using AI to generate those sentences on the fly, which is a little bit different. I obviously don't love AI. I don't want every side character in games to use AI voice generation because you'll immediately be able to tell. And just like when stuff is written by a computer, it still has that stank on it where you can tell it's not necessarily written by a human. But I feel like at some point when it comes to open world games, specifically from Ubisoft, that is the direction we are 100% heading. And I just hope that Sony keeps this energy that they're talking about right now, where they use AI for just tasks, you know, checkbox type stuff, where it's like we have all this busy work to do instead of creating the world. And I like that format because then they can let the creators create and then they can let the computer compute. So yeah, AI is definitely one of those things that you just expect to hear about from every company right now, because again, the investors are like, what about this AI thing? How can we leverage this in our games to reduce the cost of making games? And it's like really cool to hear Sony talking about it in a respectful way, where they're like, we want to give artists tools where they can just create. We want to take all that busy work shit away from them that bogs down their day. And the last section of this speech is talking about the Activision Blizzard. And the last section of this speech, also confident, talking about the Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft. He said, healthy competition is necessary for the games industry to grow, and at Sony, we believe it is important to provide gamers with different options to play. So we will continue our efforts to achieve this. Now, he's not going to get super deep into it and say those fuckers at Microsoft bought our biggest selling game every year. But even that tide seems to be changing, because with Modern Warfare 3, it was the first time in I think like over 15 years where Call of Duty wasn't the best selling game of the year. Hogwarts Legacy was the best selling game of 2023 by a wide margin. So right at the exact moment when Sony has a reason to be scared because Microsoft bought one of the biggest assets that Sony had, which was early access to betas and everything like that, and the full marketing rights for Call of Duty seems to be taking a dip with popularity, which makes sense because the most profitable thing in Call of Duty now apparently is Warzone, which like I'm kind of over the battle royale thing, but I totally get that because free to play is always going to bring more people in than paying $100 a year for the newest Call of Duty release. And Sony's already doing a good job combating this. We know they're working on first-person shooters. Of course, it's going to take a little bit to get the ball rolling. I don't think any of the games, whether you're talking Concord or the other one, what's the other one called? Fair Games. I don't think between Concord and Fair Games, whichever one of those is a first-person shooter, I don't think any of those are going to compete with Call of Duty or even like, I don't know, Doom and Doom Eternal, but at least they're trying to get something going and they're hiring the right people. They have the guy who rebuilt Rainbow Six Siege working over at Guerrilla Games, for example, so I believe that Sony has the ability to do this. I understand why they moved away from first-person shooters, because their biggest franchise, Killzone, never really became the Halo killer that it wanted to be, but it's been long enough where I feel like they can either revive some brands or make some new ones that maybe will compete with Call of Duty. You never know when something big is going to come out, and Call of Duty's been at the top long enough where I think people are hungry for something new. And at the end of the day, Sony can always just fall back on third-person open world action adventure games, and people would be very happy about that, because if you look at the discourse surrounding the Indiana Jones game, everyone is upset that's first person. They're sharing some Uncharted 4 screenshots saying, look how good this looks. And while I agree, a lot of people didn't show up at launch for Uncharted 4. It sold well. It's one of the best-selling PlayStation games ever, but it doesn't hold a candle to some other stuff that Sony's put out. So all I'm saying is maybe don't wait for the subscription service next time a new Uncharted comes out. Show up day one and support games like that, because that's a big reason I feel why Sony kind of moved on from Uncharted in the first place. But yeah, that kind of rounds the whole thing out, and really I'm feeling very positive about this. I know things are down right now with 2024 with no huge games coming out specifically from Sony's first party, but the longer we wait, the better games we're going to get, and the third party and second party are really showing up on PlayStation this year. There are rumors that Final Fantasy 16 is switching over to Xbox because Sony doesn't want to pay anymore to keep it exclusive, and all that tells us is that that game just didn't sell very well. But with the one that did sell well, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, they just re-upped their partnership with Square Enix, so I would not guess that you're going to see Final Fantasy Rebirth on Xbox anytime soon. So as far as I'm concerned, that is a tried and true PlayStation 5 exclusive. Anyway guys, that's all I've got for you today. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.